A couple of days after getting fired from my job, Darren Prescott came to my door again. He would usually visit on a Saturday. He said if we could just go out for some coffee again. I said, okay. At that time, I was naive. I had no idea what was going on. I went to get some coffee, and then we had some things to eat, some food to eat. These CSIS interrogators, what they use is called a technique called rapport building. They avoid the read technique. These are interrogation techniques that you can actually look up online. The thing is, they would appear extremely friendly to you at your face and appear like they care about you. They build a rapport, that they try to gain your trust. And then they try to ask questions to trap you. This is how the net was thrown. This is how a bait was thrown. When I told him to look me up on the internet, this is how Darren actually came up. I have a recording. I'm looking for one right now. What I did after the first visit, because it was just an unannounced visit. I had no idea what CSIS was. So the next time he came in, I was, by chance, I had this small recording device. I was into gadgets and other things back then. So I had this recording device. Turned that recording device on while we were at the getting coffee, and I put it in my pocket. It would look like just a pen. He asked me how I was doing. I told him I got fired, and he acted like, what, really? So Darren started asking me questions, saying, look, I looked up your High Five. There used to be a website called High Five. It was a social media network, kind of like MySpace back then. And he said, well, you wrote in your likes. It was a documentary I was watching those days. It was about USS Cole being destroyed, things like those. And in my likes, I was talking about what are the things that I liked. So naturally, because of my liking, I said I usually like guns. During my off time in Edmonton, I found this shooting range. Now remember, in Pakistan, there were no such thing as a shooting range. And I was already playing Call of Duty games. So always you have this kind of feeling that what would a real gun feel like when you were shooting? So I used to frequent that shooting range as well. So I had put over there that I like guns. He took those things out and he said that, oh, look, he likes guns. He's watching documentaries about jihad. Oh, this is the kind of person you are. Even if you go to people's Facebook profiles, they don't update their profiles every day unless you're some kind of a social media nerd. So if you're watching this thing and you're putting everything out there, just remember, anything and everything can be used against you. So be very careful. I tried to give him an explanation, but I said, well, yeah, I like guns. I still do. As a matter of fact, in the future videos, you're going to see much more about those. So then he said that let's have something to eat about a block over from the Starbucks back then. We were having some food and he pulled out a booklet and he said, is it okay if I take note of these things? Now remember, these people, they already have a recording device on them. Just remember that. When they actually act like, is it okay if I take notes of this whole conversation? Is it okay if I take notes? This is just to throw you off. This is just to tell you that they were originally not paying attention. Now they're paying attention. So if your lawyer ever teaches you or tells you not to talk to CSIS, you have just found out as a reason. Remember in my last video, I told you guys that I belong to what's called Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, which is the Sunni sect. Amongst the Muslims, there are two common sects. The two most prominent sects. One is the Sunni, the other is the Shia. The Sunni sect has several schools of jurisprudence amongst them, or mazhab. The four schools of jurisprudence most common in the Sunni sect are the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi'i, and the Hanbali. People from Pakistan are mostly Hanafi. And amongst the Hanafis in Pakistan, there are two common schools of thought. One is called Barelvi, The other is called the Deobandis. I adhere to what's called the Deoband school of thought or Deobandi school of thought. What Darren did was that he said, well, you said you belong to Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat. I said, yeah. I said, that is another name for Sipai Sahaba. Now, Sipai Sahaba, for whatever the reasons might be, that group was labeled a terrorist or proscribed terrorist group back then. I do not know what that group is doing nowadays or what's their standing, whatever. I explained to Darren that no, that's a different group. He said, no, but Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat, that's the name, another name of Sipai Sahaba. I explained to them, I said, no. Sunnis are called Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat or Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat. So if a group starts calling themselves Sunnis, or that does not mean that everyone belonging to the Sunni school of thought or a Sunni sect of Islam is a member of that group. This is very important for you to understand. He said, but such and such speaker of your group has been speaking about Shias and things like those. I said, what leader? Now remember, I told you, the group I mentioned before was Ittihad Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. It's a different group. It basically means the unity of the Sunnis. And Darren said, your leader's name is Ziaur Rahman Faruqi and Haq Namaz Shangri, I think, something like that. I said, again, you're trying to throw a net at me, trying to catch something. That group you're saying, that group is called Sipai Sahaba. They may have called themselves Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. I am not a member of Sipai Sahaba. I am not a member of that group. What I'm saying is that the group of people or the scholars that I adhere to, they have an academic group, not a sectarian group, not a political group. It's an academic group. It's called Ittihad Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. And the main person running that group is Maulana Ilyas Goman. That's all that happened. But what was very interesting was that he was adamant on making me admit somehow that Ittihad Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat and Sipai Sahaba are the same group. Despite me explaining to him over and over, Darren did not concede, or Darren did not write that thing down in his notes, which apparently were just dummy notes. So if your lawyer or anybody comes up and tells you that nothing good is ever going to come of you out of your conversation with CSIS, here's another example. The conversation does not end there. I got home. I called a group called CAIR Canada. That's when they said, you should not speak to those people. They're trying to set a trap around you. I spoke to two people. I think one's name was Julia Williams. The other person was Ihsan Gerti. And I asked them, what should I do? He said, well, you should not have any more conversation. Just say that we're not going to have any more conversations. Darren and CSIS had already contacted my older brother who was living in Ontario back then. Now remember, if you work for power generation companies, you need to have a certain level of security clearance with CSIS. My brother did not say that. My brother had not told me that. CSIS had visited him. A week later, Darren knocked on the door again. I was downstairs. I was living in the basement. I've already shared the photo. I said, go away, Darren. I'm not going to have any more conversation with you. And Darren said, is everything okay? I think we had a thing going on. I said, what? I'm not going to have any more conversation. If you have any issue, let me know. My lawyer will talk to you. That should have been my first ever response. But it's not as simple, as you're going to find out in the further videos. In the next week, I contacted my landlord with whom I was living in Edmonton. And I asked them if they have a place available over there, because Calgary was just not a place for me. It just felt really hostile of an environment for me. And living in Edmonton felt much more at home for me. I spoke to Andrew, the person who was a caretaker of the place I was staying in Inglewood. And I said, well, now I have to leave. I explained to him the situation, and he was taken aback as well. He's like, wow, I had no idea. I left. I went to Edmonton. I got back on my employment insurance. CSIS never stopped chasing me. I was just about to end the video there, but then I just came across this incident report that I had written for CAIR Canada back then. And much of the information is similar, except I have dates now. So Darren first showed up on March 5th. March 17th, 2011, I was fired from my job. March 19th, around 3 p.m., Darren came again. And this time, I told him I will not talk to him. I would also like to add that my brother Sadiq, who was in Peterborough at that time, told me that him and his family were separately questioned in isolation about a week before Darren showed up to my house. So they had already done their work. It's not that they were just curious. They just wanted to get my side of the story, and they could try to catch me in some kind of contradiction and then try to build a case against me. Now, I left Calgary on March 28th, 2011 and came back to Edmonton at my place of stay. I told my brother about the incident, and he said, well, you should not have given that guy a hard time. You should not have denied answering any more questions for them. So he called Darren. And Darren said, we're just observing him, and if we are given a hard time, we can simply hand the case over to RCMP. And RCMP can arrest him. But we don't want to go there. This is just an intimidation tactic. They're saying that if you refuse to answer a question, we're going to hand over your case to RCMP, and the RCMP can arrest me. So after hearing this, my brother got scared, and he suggested that I resume my talks with Darren and answer him politely, because I yelled at him last time. I just said, go away. That's what I was doing. If you're downstairs and there's a guy upstairs and I'm saying, go away, man, I don't want to talk to you, that does not constitute yelling, but okay, according to them, it was yelling. This should be the end of the video. Till the next video.